Alrighty, everybody, we're going to be finishing up this week's homeworks video with the Thursday column video. And in Thursday's column, we're being asked to factor the following expressions. So we're going to be factoring. And so the very first thing that's going to help us understand what factoring is to define factor. What is a factor? Now, you might know that the factors, for example, the factors of 2 are 2 and 1, but what is the definition of a factor? What does that really mean? Well, a factor is defined as a number that can be multiplied by another number to produce a number or expression. So that seems like a pretty long definition. So I'm going to break it up into just something a little more simple. What we can define a factor as is one of the numbers that can multiply by another number to equal a certain number. So that actually didn't really break it up too much, but let's do an example. So what would be the factors of 2? What number multiplied by another number can equal 2? Well, the number 1 is a factor of 2 because 1 times 2 equals 2. And then the number 2 is also a factor of 2 because 2 times 1 equals 2. So 1 and 2 can each be multiplied by a different number than itself in order to equal this number, 2. Now let's do 12. So for 12, what are the factors of 12? Well, 1 times 12 will equal 12. 2 times 6 will equal 12. 4 times 3 will equal 12. 3 times 4. 6 times 2. And then 12 times 1. All of these numbers we would consider factors of 12 because those numbers multiplied by another number will give me 12 as a solution. And so what we need to do when we're factoring is we have to figure out what's the greatest common factor, or what factor the both of the numbers inside of our expression. So, oh man, why does it keep doing that? Both numbers that are inside of the expression, so this is our expression. What is the greatest common factor of 2 and 12? So the greatest common factor of 2 and 12, I can see that the biggest number that is a factor for 2 is 2. And then so that means that the greatest common factor for 2 and 12 would be 2. Even though 12 has more other factors like 4, 3, 6, and 12, the greatest common factor between 2 and 12 is 2 itself. So here's what we do with that information. Because we're factoring this expression, we need to turn this expression into 2 separate parts that when multiplied will equal this expression, because that's the definition of a factor, so that's what we're doing. So we know that whenever we have 2 sets of parentheses next to one another, that means we're doing a multiplication. And so we're going to be multiplying 2 different things that when multiplied together will equal this. So we're going to take this expression and turn it into its factors, or into the numbers that when multiplied by each other will equal that expression. Well, we just said, like I told you guys, in the first box, you're going to be putting the greatest common factor. So the number that is the greatest common factor between 2 and 12. And the easy way that we would say that is what number goes both into 2 and 12. And we just talked about how 2 is the greatest common factor, the biggest number that will go into 2 and 12. And then so you got to ask yourself, how am I going to figure out what goes in here? Well, the easiest way to do that is to divide the expression, the original expression, by the number that you chose as the greatest common factor, which would be 2. And then you do each part separately. So you do 2x divided by 2. 2x divided by 2 leaves us with just x. And then you're going to do 12 divided by 2. And that 12 divided by 2 leaves you with 6. And then you're going to keep the sign in the middle the same. So the operation is going to stay the same. This is going to be x minus 6. Or if you wanted to change it to plus negative 6, it's still the same thing because addition and subtraction are opposites of one another. So either way works. I'm going to keep it as minus. And so this Let me erase some stuff. 2 times the quantity of x minus 6 is the factored version of 2x minus 12. And we can see that because 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times 6 is 12. Operation stays the same. You can see that when you multiply these two sets of parentheses, you end up with the same original expression. And we just talked about how the factors of a number or of an expression is the numbers that can be multiplied together to equal that expression. And 2 times x minus 6 equals 2x minus 12. And so that means that these are the factors of 2x minus 12. So hopefully, conceptually, that's making a little more sense, or at least you now have the technique down. Let's do another one together. Let's do this third one. So again, you're going to be ending up with 2 sets of parentheses. And in the first set, I'm going to choose my greatest common factor. So the number that can go both into 3 and 12, the biggest number that can go into them. And the only numbers that can go into 3 are 3 and 1. And we just talked a little earlier about how 12 has 12, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So the greatest common factor would be 3. That's what I'm going to put in my first set of parentheses. And then now to determine what goes next, I'll take this expression and divide it by that number that I chose, 3, that greatest common factor. Time to floss my teeth. And so I'm going to figure out what goes here by doing negative 3t divided by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then negative divided by positive is a negative 1. So this is going to be a negative t minus 12 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Both of them are positive, so it stays as a positive 4. And so I just figured out that the factor of a set of factors of negative 3t minus 12 is 3 and negative t minus 4. That is the factored version of negative 3t minus 12. And I want to do that one because of the negative number. And so I'm going to let you do the rest. This following up one is the same as the one we just did, except for it includes a addition sign, but just make sure you are watching that negative.